Welcome to the Sense of Hope podcast by One Life. I'm your host, Helen Duyvestyn, and today we are speaking to Ainsley Duyvestyn-Smith. Ainsley is a New Zealand-born photographer, writer, activist, and ancient history buff with a passion for travel and cultural exploration. Having lived and travelled in over 40 countries, Ainsley combines her eye for documentary photography with a fine art approach, creating empowering portraits that capture natural beauty of her subjects and aim to deconstruct narrow beauty ideals. Her work often focuses on underrepresented stories and global issues, and Ainsley is currently a finalist in New Zealand Geographic Photography Awards. In 2019, Ainsley began experiencing several events that led her down a path of physical and mental health challenges. These have led her into a deeper understanding of some of the issues facing women in the health system. She is now pursuing a degree in ancient history and Egyptology, bringing a deep sense of curiosity to her creative projects. She is also working as an activist, attempting to change the way gynecological procedures are done in New Zealand. Welcome to the podcast, Ainsley.
Hi, thank you.
Ainsley, one of the first questions I have for you is, when did you notice that things started to go wrong for you, or when did you notice that things weren't quite right?
It's been something that I'd kind of dealt with since I was a teenager, but I always just thought that it was normal and never really took too much notice of things that were going on. And then in 2019, I went through quite a serious and life-changing breakup, which resulted in me having to move countries and give up my visa, and was just a really, really stressful, difficult time. And it was then that I started getting some really strange physical symptoms, which included really severe vertigo, which would just completely knock me out for a day or two, and just really bad fatigue and ongoing stomach issues with sort of IBS symptoms. And later on, a few months after that, I got tinnitus, which just would not go away and was relentless. So that was kind of the beginning of the warning signs, I guess, that things were not going so well for me at that stage.
They're pretty big warning signs, aren't they?
They are, and they're also really hard to deal with because it's so internal, and it's not serious enough for a GP to actually do anything about it. So you're the one that's left with trying to figure out what they mean. And I was very much on my own in that situation, trying to figure out what was going on and doing my own research, basically. So yeah, it was a really tricky time in lots of ways.
And I think during all that time, as I understand it, that you returned home and almost straight into a COVID lockdown.
Yeah, so part of the breakup meant me returning to New Zealand, and I'd only planned to come back for a few months, and then kind of split my life between here and Paris, which was where I was living at the time. And then COVID happened, and I kind of got stuck here. And the first big lockdown that we had, my health actually improved a lot. I was doing a lot better. I had a lot more energy. Things were going quite well. And then when things opened up again, I started trying to get work again. And I noticed a lot of the chronic fatigue and the depression symptoms start to come back around then as well.
And what do you think that was? Do you think that was just trying to assimilate back into an ordinary life, or?
Yeah, I think it was just not getting enough rest and the kind of stress of the financial situation that so many people were in at that stage as well, and uncertainty and kind of not being able to continue on with this amazing life plan that I had in the beginning. And it was the second lockdown where I ended up meeting my now fiance. which was a blessing in disguise. But we were only together for about 3 months in that lockdown when I was in a car accident and was rear-ended, had my car written off, had quite a severe whiplash and neck and brain injury. And the irony of it was that I was on my way to a gynecology appointment at that time because I was having really severe endometriosis symptoms, and I wanted to talk to the gynecologist about getting a IUD Mirena put in to try and manage those symptoms. So yeah, it was a it was a really strange time, and then it just got a lot worse from there, basically.
Right. So we haven't even touched the edge of how bad things got for you.
Oh no, no.
Okay. All right. Tell us what happened next.
The first thing was a bit of a red flag when I arrived at my gynecology appointment after I'd just been in this car accident, and I was still in a bit of shock at that stage, and I didn't realize that I had a neck injury. I just felt quite stiff, and I didn't want to miss this appointment because it had taken me weeks to get on the waiting list to see a specialist. So I turned up and I sort of said, oh, I've just been in a car accident. And they were like, are you okay? And I said, oh, yeah, I think so. And started talking about the option of getting a Mirena. And I'd had an IUD, a copper IUD put in about maybe 7 years before that, and had a really, really painful and traumatic experience having that in. I went into what I now know is called cervical shock, where the IUD can sort of hit a nerve, and I passed out. I went white. I thought I was going to throw up. It was just this severe, overwhelming pain. And it took me, I had to sit in this chair for about an hour afterwards to try and recover. And so I was explaining this to the gynecologist and said, I really need to make sure that I've got really good pain relief. I need to have someone who's really experienced. I don't want to go through that level of pain again. I'm not prepared to do that. And so they sort of reassured me that it might not be so bad next time, and maybe it was just the wrong person, and tried to kind of reassure me and diminish my concerns, I guess. But then turned around and said, oh, we've got an appointment free this afternoon if you want to just pop it in then. And I just had to look at him. I was like, did you not hear anything that I just said about this being a huge mental and physical challenge for me? I'm not just gonna do it this afternoon because you've got a free appointment. So that was a bit of a red flag for me, which I didn't really realize at the time, but now looking back, I should have taken it as a sign. And then so he very generously gave me a very, very low dose of morphine, which I now understand is about the same as what you would give a child going into a procedure. So it was effectively a placebo, and it did absolutely nothing in the end. So a couple of weeks later, after the car accident, I had my appointment to get this Mirena put in. I had already been in the ED at that stage because I had a reaction to one of the muscle relaxant medications I was on for my neck injury, which led my whole body to have tremors. And the ED couldn't figure out what it was. They just kind of sent me home. And so it was a week later, then I was in the gynecology getting this Mirena put in, and I took the morphine. I felt nothing from that. The gynecologist said, oh, well, it's going to hurt anyway, so you might as well get it over and done with. And it went horribly, horribly wrong. She had multiple attempts at getting 3 different types of Mirenas in, and none of them would go in. And it was about half an hour of me screaming and sweating and crying and just in the worst possible pain imaginable. And at one stage, I asked her to stop, and she did for a bit, but then she continued without my consent. So it was just a really traumatic experience that just kind of shook me. And eventually I did get a smaller version of the Marina in. And the idea was that it was supposed to help with my periods. But unfortunately, a week later, when I did get my period, the IUD was basically trying to just expel itself from my body. So I ended up back in ED, again in severe, severe pain, unlike anything I'd ever felt before, and already traumatized from the previous two experiences, didn't want anybody to touch me basically, but had to get it out of me. So it was just trauma upon trauma and severe physical pain, followed by more severe physical pain. And that kind of set off a very long period of chronic pain, chronic illness, and mental health issues after that. It's a long story.
It's a long story, and it's unbelievable how it is literally one thing on top of another on top of another. And what I find, I'm a health professional, and obviously for those listening, if you haven't already picked up, I'm Ainsley's mother, so I'm very aware of a lot of the things that went on, but not in all the detail. And as a health professional, I can see both sides, that you want to reassure a person. Maybe it was just a bad procedure that they'd had previously. Obviously, you want it to go well for them. So you want to reassure them. But then I also hear that the health professional isn't truly listening, or isn't truly hearing, or isn't truly believing that that was your experience. So I can hold these two beliefs. I can hold these two ideas of a person who is trying to be heard and has got a significant reaction, and a health professional that's like, well, no, nobody else reacts like that, or maybe some people do, but that's not that what we have experienced, or that's so unusual. So kind of being dismissed actually, and understanding how that just adds to your trauma, because A, it's a health condition, but B, it's a very vulnerable health condition.
Extremely, yeah.
You're sitting in an office, you're sitting in a treatment room, no doubt with your legs up in a vulnerable position. And the whole thing to me, really does make me feel a little bit queasy myself hearing the story. So, boy, yeah, it's challenging all round. So I know that you've become quite an activist around this, and we will talk about that shortly. But what progressed for you from here, and what did you do to try, what did you understand what was happening, and what did you do to try and help yourself get through this time?
So at that stage, I didn't really understand what was happening. I knew that I had been through multiple really difficult situations, and I knew that I had a challenge ahead of me, especially on the endometriosis side of things, because I kept having to go back to gynecology appointments after that to go on the waiting list for surgery. So that was really difficult, and I became incredibly stressed and worried and anxious about every single appointment that I had, because for me it was just reliving those previous experiences. At that stage, I already had a really good counsellor, and I had been talking to them about the things that had been going on. But it kind of started snowballing at that stage, to the point that the counselling just wasn't enough. A couple of months after that, my physical endometriosis symptoms just skyrocketed to the point that I was in pain every single day. And like debilitating pain as well. So I ended up back in hospital again, and was kind of again dismissed and told it's probably just chronic pelvic pain, or we don't really know why this is happening. One doctor said to me, oh, everybody's jumping to the conclusion that it's endometriosis now, but it's probably not. And they were about to send me home when one last endometriosis surgeon was the one who was discharging me. And she came in and straight away said, yep, it sounds like endometriosis. I'm going to put you on the waiting list for surgery. So that was the first person that actually validated and had seen everything, all my symptoms, everything that I had been going through, and got the ball rolling for me to have surgery. However, there was a 9-month wait list at that stage. So I had 9 months ahead of me of chronic, severe daily pain. And I had to kind of learn and teach myself how to deal with that and how to live with that, because there's just not a lot of resources available for people who have these sort of conditions. Once you can get into a service like a pain clinic or a gynecology specialist, they can be extremely helpful, but the wait list for those services was up to a year at that stage. So it wasn't even something that was going to be a help for me that I could look forward to at that stage. So I was completely on my own. I had to give up work because I couldn't handle my physical job anymore. I'm also a freelancer as well, so I lost just thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in gigs because I couldn't take them on anymore. I lost my social life, I lost friends, I lost travel opportunities. Every single aspect of my life at that stage had been diminished, basically. And I was basically in bed all the time. I had to limit my study hours as well, so I became a part-time student. Some of my grades failed, and well, I didn't fail, but they suffered a lot because of the pain. And at that stage, I hadn't accepted that I had a disability, so I hadn't gone to seek any of the help that was available for me. So I was really pushing against this idea of me actually being chronically ill and disabled, and was just trying to get through it and push it away and fix it and heal it, and very, very busy trying to do all the things to stop this from happening without actually accepting that it was happening to me. So that was really, really difficult. And in that time, I also, while trying to heal from the IUD experience, started remembering a couple of sexual assaults that I had had in Paris when I was living there as well. So started getting like flashbacks and dealing with all the sort of violation that came from those, and then repeating that again with the Marina and every gynecology appointment. So there was a lot going on mentally, and I didn't realize it at the time, but it was the mental stress that was affecting my body so much. And it took me a long time to kind of make that connection as well.
Mm. Yeah, and I'm fascinated around how, because our minds and our bodies are so strongly connected, but
Yeah.
in our medical model system, we think that they're very separate models. But it sounds to me like the psychological trauma and stresses that you had that perhaps you'd ignored or you'd pushed down, or we just carry on with our lives.
Yeah.
Perhaps I don't know, and I'd like to hear about what you think about this, but it sounds to me like your body was in like a chronic fight or flight state, and constantly trying to defend itself against the next onslaught, which would have impact on your muscles, on your digestive system, on your level of concentration. Like it affects, when we're under chronic stress, it affects everything. You can't get away from it.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. It was exactly that. It felt like I was constantly stuck in that fight or flight. Like everything was tense. Everything was like I had full body. It wasn't just limited to the pelvic area. Like my whole body was sore every single day, alongside the endometriosis pain. It was, yeah, and I didn't know I didn't understand that at that stage as well, which was part of the difficulty of trying to figure out every day, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? Why can't I get any better? Why isn't anybody listening to me? The doctors wouldn't explain it in a way that I understood it. Sort of seemed as though they were implying that it's kind of in your head without actually explaining the science behind how your body and mind are connected. So it just kind of made me feel like I was really, really, there was something wrong with me and nobody else got it.
Mm. And yet, actually, your body was just responding quite normally. And this is,
Yeah, exactly.
as my role in psychiatry, we would often get asked to see people in hospital who have come in with chronic conditions, chronic pain, what they call functional disorders, basically many disorders that don't seem to have physical reasons for their symptoms. And often what the person would say is that, oh, great, so now they think it's all in my head. And so I used to spend a lot of time trying to explain that, your body is responding to what's going on in your mind. So yes, your mind has a big part of it. That doesn't mean to say that your symptoms are in your head. And it's very complex and
Yeah.
difficult for people to
Yeah.
understand.
Because you can't just flick a switch in your brain and say, oh, it's just in my head, so I'll turn that off and then your body's going to be fine again. It's not that
Yeah.
easy, unfortunately. And I think, yeah, there's a lot of misconception about the mental health and body connection, that people think, oh, well, if it's in your head, then why don't you just fix your head and you'll be fine? Because it's not that simple. And yeah, it took me a very, very long time to be able to understand what was happening.
Mm. So what did help?
So eventually, I did have surgery. And that went really, really well as it could have gone. They removed um, a fair bit of deep infiltrating endometriosis. And the really interesting thing was that I could feel, as soon as the surgery was over, I could feel there was used to be this constant kind of ball of spiky fire in my hip and groin area. And as soon as the surgery was done, that was gone. It just disappeared. So it was like they'd just literally removed all this tissue that was causing me so much pain. So that was really, really helpful for about 3 or 4 months. And then I got COVID for the second time. And that just absolutely knocked me and sent my body into that sort of inflammatory response again. And so all the symptoms that I had had previously came back: the chronic fatigue, the pain, the brain fog, just that heavy, heavy not being able to move or function or anything like that. And it just wouldn't go away. And at that stage, I'd sort of like just started to get my life back a little bit. I'd gone back to uni. I'd taken a couple of papers because I thought that I could handle two at this stage. And I was just starting to work again. And so it just felt like a huge setback that pulled me all the way back to where I was before the surgery. Um, and I was just at that stage trying to find daily ways to manage the pain, which just revolved a lot around like heat pads and painkillers and gentle yoga and all those little things that helped but weren't actually solving the problem at all. So I had to drop one of my papers because I just wasn't able to complete to keep up with everything. I also had to leave the one stable part-time job that I did have at that stage as well. And then I was just lost, completely lost. Felt like there was nothing ahead of me, that this was going to be me for the rest of my life. And then I got a wisdom tooth infection. And that was kind of the beginning and the end for me at that point. Um, the pain was like acute and quite intense, but it was just on top of years and years of chronic daily pain. So I just had nothing in the bank to be able to deal with this new severe pain that was coming. I didn't have the finances to get a surgery. So I had to apply for WINS because I hadn't been working, and that's a really stressful thing. If you've ever had to deal with WINS, it's never a pleasant experience. And then one day I just decided I couldn't do it anymore, and my body and my mind just completely shut down. I was in bed for 2 days. I didn't eat anything. I didn't drink anything. I didn't had the curtains shut. I couldn't talk. I was just like a vegetable, basically. And I kept saying to my partner that I couldn't live anymore. I didn't want to be alive anymore. I didn't have the energy to actually remove myself from the world on my own, but I was just lying there wishing that I wouldn't wake up so that I didn't have to deal with this body and this life anymore. So at that stage, we went to the ED again, and I was sort of waiting to see a doctor for about 5 or 6 hours until I got some tramadol for the tooth pain. And as soon as I had that, I suddenly started to feel sort of normal again. Like I sort of came out of this heavy black hole that I was in. And it was then that I realized, like, oh, it's actually just the pain that's turned me into this shell of a human being. But we still needed to see the mental health team because I expressed the desire to die to the nurses, basically. So they were trying to get me to see the mental health team so that I could talk to someone, maybe get on some sort of system. And so we ended up waiting for, I think, 10 and a half hours all day in ED. Nobody came. I think at maybe 10 or 11 o'clock or something, we said, look, this is making me worse. I can't sit in this cold ED surrounded by people who were having severe mental health issues and physical health issues. And it was just a very depressing place to be for all that time. And so we just left, and without seeing the mental health team, and I got a follow-up phone call, and they just kind of checked in a few times that week, and that was all the assistance that I got from them. So it was kind of then that we had realized we had to make some big changes around home life and work, job, everything. We moved out of the place that we were living in and moved in with Mum, thankfully, and went on holiday for a month. I decided to start trying some new hormonal contraception to try and actually get rid of my periods, because the periods were a huge problem for me at that stage and causing a lot of what I'm pretty sure is PMDD, that just severe depression and anxiety before every period, which would just make everything worse. So I started on some new medication, and that started helping immediately. I stopped getting periods, which I didn't think would ever happen for me. And it just gave me like a week of every 3 weeks of my life back, which has been incredible. And then I also started microdosing psilocybin from a trusted friend who had given me some to try. And it was then that I felt like I could start to understand what was actually happening in my body and in my brain and how those were connected. And it was just this incredible feeling of, I could almost feel like the cells in my brain were like healing themselves slowly, day by day. I'd go for a walk on the beach, or I'd go for a swim, or I'd sit in the grass, and I could start to feel my nervous system like tell my body, like, it's okay, you're safe here. Like, there's no need to be in this anxious fight or flight mode. Things are okay. You're going to be okay. And it was just this incredible, like, life-changing sort of time where things just slowly started to get better.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So a bit of an odd question maybe, but where do you think you are now on your healing journey? Do you think you're 90% of the way through? Where do you think you're at? Or do you think you're better than what you were prior to all this stuff happening?
I mean, in some ways, maybe I'm better in terms of being more self-aware of my mental and physical health. I'm definitely better at that. I don't push things down anymore. I don't just carry on. I rest when I need to. I'm definitely not physically 100%. I still have days where, like yesterday, I went for maybe an hour walk in the park with a friend, and today every single muscle in my body hurts. Like I'm still sort of at that up and down stage at the moment, but I can go for an hour-long walk in the park with my friend, which I couldn't do 6 months or a year ago. So that's been a huge improvement. And just learning to understand where my limit is, how much rest I need, what I can take on, what I can get involved in. It's I still feel like I'm learning every single day how to live and manage this chronic illness, because it hasn't just disappeared. I'm just getting better at managing it, and the symptoms are less severe because of that. I'm also now at the stage, it's taken me 3 years now since the Marina IUD experience. I'm finally now at the stage where I feel like I can start talking about it, and that I can actually start doing something about it, which was another thing that I turns out I can be quite hard on myself for a lot of things, like many people. And a lot of the time, up until these last 3 years, I was carrying a lot of guilt because I knew that other women and other people were having very similar experiences to me. And I felt like I should be doing something to stop that, to stop it from happening to more people. And so I just kept waiting for myself to get better and have the energy to be able to do that. And it was just all I wanted to do was to just stop this from happening. And so now that I'm finally at a place where I can start to take on more and have a little bit more energy, I'm starting to work towards those solutions. So that's been really, really healing in a lot of ways to be able to do that.
So what are you looking at doing when you talk about changing things? What exactly are you hoping to change for women? I assume it's around your IUD insertion. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I am in the process of launching a petition that is going to Parliament. It's going to be accepted by a Green Party member. And it's effectively around asking the New Zealand health system to change the way that IUD, biopsies, leak procedures, any gynecology procedures are performed in New Zealand, basically. And it's actually just really simple things that I want to see change. Things that you would get in any other medical procedure that you don't get in gynecology. It's just like informed consent and having really clear, detailed information about exactly what the procedure is, because they don't tell you these things before you go in and spread your legs for this random stranger. So, yeah, detailed about the information, listening to the patient when they say that they're in pain and giving them the option to stop, and giving them the option to rebook the procedure with perhaps some heavier painkillers, actually providing painkillers and not having to demand them as a patient, having the option already there, especially for people who know that they have anxiety or pain. It should just be a given thing, and it is in many other countries. And so we're really, really behind on a lot of these procedures. And just being treated like a human being, basically, and not like some faceless, painless robot that you just perform these incredibly invasive procedures on with no care, no aftercare, no pain relief. And so it's a pretty clear list and basic list, and we just want to see that implemented across the boards, that people are better trained, and people just have better options and consent, basically, around their pain management and procedures.
Wow. Okay. It sounds amazing. It sounds like you might make some changes to New Zealand. Is it New Zealand law as such, or just recommendations from
It'll be recommendations. Yeah, yeah. It's quite similar to the United States has also just made some recommendation changes around the gynecology procedures as well. So it'll be something similar to those guidelines.
Amazing. That's so, I mean, I don't know, but I imagine it's a nice way to direct some of that energy that
Yes,
you've got, because as I may have mentioned this before, as in my mind, anger is the mother of all motivators. So if you're angry enough about
absolutely.
something and you can turn it into a direction that involves a change, that's a wonderful way to direct that energy, because otherwise I think it just kind of eats you up, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's just so many people that have had a similar experience to me and have had their lives changed because of it. And it's just, it's 2024 now, and it's the procedures that are in place are loose and do not put the patient first at all. And I just think we're just so behind, especially when you look at how, for example, vasectomies are done, and the fact that men get adequate and good pain relief and care for those, and we're just expected to suck it up with no pain relief. It's mind blowing.
Mm. It's interesting. I think even in vasectomies, I don't think men get full informed consent because the changes that happen after they have vasectomies are significant. And many men find that quite a surprise because they were not told about the
That's
impact
true.
that vasectomies can have on them. But boy, okay. And I think so. The other thing, so there's this, a lot of this is about the gynecology care, the input that you had, the care that you didn't get. But then I think from what I hear of your story, a lot of the symptoms that you've had, a lot of the illness that you have experienced, none of these things that you've experienced are things that GPs will say, oh, yes, I know what that is and I know how to fix. And I used to notice this in psychiatry a lot as well. There's a term called heart sink patient. It's the patient that walks into the GP's office with some vague symptoms that we don't have an easy cure for. We often don't have an understanding for. The GP or the doctors involved, whoever's involved, feel themselves a little bit frustrated because they don't know what to do. So they don't have an answer, they can't give you an answer. And so it's just kind of like, well, off you go because there is no space for you. And I think that that's a massive problem within our medical system, is that there's all these other diseases, for the want of a better word, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, even endometriosis. There's no, apart from surgery, well, actually, we've got no idea what to do. We don't really know how to
Yeah.
prevent it. And so you had a number of different things: the fatigue, the tinnitus, the abnormal body sensations that you got, after your car accident and the medication. And so you had all these strange things that weren't easily diagnosable, that nobody was able to say, oh, yes, I know what that is. Here, do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And one on top of another, on top of another, on top of another. So
Yeah.
it's a lot to carry, a lot to hold on to, and a lot to feel unheard about, I
Yeah.
think.
It was really, really difficult because every specialist that I saw would blame the issue that I was seeing them about on the other thing that was happening. So if I went to an endometriosis specialist, they would say, oh, that's because of the brain injury from your car accident. And then the neurologist said, oh, it's because you've got chronic illness. And it would just kind of go back and forth, and I would never get a clear answer on anything. And I must have seen every single type of specialist and natural healer, natural practitioner, and psychologist. And I tried everything, and still there was no sort of holistic care where somebody could look at everything that was going on and say, oh, actually, this makes sense because this is what happens when you're suffering from CPTSD, which was kind of, I knew that I had PTSD because of the marina and the assaults, and I was getting help for that. It wasn't until I saw on, maybe it was on TikTok or Instagram, the symptoms of CPTSD, and it was like a light bulb going on. I was like, oh my God, that's exactly what I've got. I fit every single symptom. And it made total sense. And why didn't anybody tell me about this from every single health practitioner that I had seen? And once I understood that that's what it was, I was able to kind of be so much kinder to myself and give myself a break, because it was like, it's not in my head. It's not something that my body is just doing because it hates me. It's like there was all this like understanding all of a sudden. And it was just, a total light bulb moment that not one person could tell me before that. So yeah, it's really, really frustrating that there's no holistic care available that that actually can look at everything, take in everything, not just try and fob you off to another specialist or to somebody else to make it somebody else's problem. And I understand that GPs and specialists and doctors are underpaid, overworked. They don't have time to deal with all these random non-life-threatening symptoms that are happening. But there's nowhere that they can send you when you are that person. So you're completely left on your own trying to figure out what is going on, and paying out of your own pocket as well to do all of the non-specialist things. Or if you want to go privately, it's thousands and thousands of dollars that your average chronic illness person does not have, because they're not able to work most of the time. So it's just, you get stuck in this cycle of being at the bottom of the pit and not seeing the light out anywhere.
And I just want to just jump in. The CPTSD is chronic post-traumatic stress disorder, just because people might not understand what it is. Is it complex? Sorry, complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah. So when it kind of doesn't resolve and then it starts affecting your physical body on a chronic level
So it's helpful to have a label to understand that this actually exists as a condition.
Yeah. So helpful. And just being able to understand that brain body connection through the lens of the CPTSD was incredible, because I started realizing that my body was actually just trying to protect me. It wasn't trying to hurt me, but it was just doing it in a way that made life very difficult for me in a modern world. So it was a really, really awakening. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a little saying that if you take a normal person and you put them through some abnormal circumstances, you're going to get some abnormal results, which is the person then saying, why this, why that, why is this happening? What but it is your body responding to stresses, which are massive. Oh, okay. So what advice might you have for someone that is going through similar situations as you've experienced?
I recently did a talk at a photography workshop, which was quite healing for me, because it was about sort of sharing this journey. And the advice that I had was basically that you just have to keep going. There's no quick fix. There's no magic. Well, there kind of is a magic medication, but you have to be doing all the work as well. Even like when you're in that darkest tunnel and you can't even see the light at the end of it, you just have to stumble around in the dark and just keep going, keep trying to find your way out of it, because it does eventually get better. Everything's in movement. You can't stay in the same place all the time. So I think that's the main thing. When you're in the worst, darkest, deepest hole, you just have to keep going step by step. And that was something that I had to remind myself of. And when I got to the stage where I couldn't keep going, I had to rely on the people that cared for me to look after me and to kind of drag me out of that hole as well. Because at that stage, I wasn't able to. So you do have to learn to trust that the people that love you have your best interests at heart as well, which for me, I'm a very independent person. I don't like giving up my independence. I don't like relying on other people. So I found that really difficult as well. But you just have to kind of let go of the ego, I think, as well, and just, okay, yep, you can look after me, you can take care of me until I get back on my feet. And yeah, it's a lot of learning for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like it's been a huge learning curve.
Mm,
Yeah, you're going to have a lot to give to others, I think, that have experienced similar conditions or who are experiencing similar conditions, because there's so much that isn't just talked about out there, especially in the way of
yeah,
chronic illness, all that's related to.
yeah, absolutely.
So you're doing some good work to change the medical systems out there.
Yes,
So
yeah,
we can watch out for a petition coming through.
yes. So at the moment, I'm working on finishing. It's going to have a website. The website is called We Deserve Better. And it's going to have a link to the petition, but it will also have resources for anybody who's going to have a gynecology procedure. And anybody who has had one and it hasn't gone well, there's going to be places where there'll be links to counsellors and helplines and ways to make a complaint if you feel like that's necessary. And yeah, just lots of hopefully really helpful information so that people can go into these procedures informed and empowered. And I'm also doing a personal photography project on the issue as well. It's called You Might Feel a Pinch, and it kind of centers around that dismissal of pain, of women's pain in gynecology. So at the moment, both of those are on Instagram. You can find them on Instagram. And eventually there'll be a website, there's going to be a Facebook page. The petition should be live in November sometime. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to hopefully making some waves and trying to get some changes happening in the way that we do things so that nobody has to go into those appointments with anxiety and fear, and it doesn't end up hurting them more than what they went in there for. So that's the main thing, really.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Is there anything else? Any last words? Anything else you'd like to say?
I think I just want to acknowledge the how hard it can be, especially for minority, queer people, people of colour, who don't feel safe accessing a lot of the medical options that are available to them as well, and who have historically been dismissed and not listened to and not treated well. And especially as women as well, it can be really nerve-wracking, especially when you have any kind of trauma that you're bringing into those appointments. And so I think the best thing is to find allies who either have been in similar situations or who have been similar to you, been through similar things as you, and really get them on your side, bring them to the appointments, talk to them about your experiences, make sure they know how you're feeling if you're anxious, and just try and get people on your team, basically. Because there's so many amazing, wonderful, awesome GPs out there and specialists, but there's also a lot who just treat it like a job, I think. And it's really hard to decipher who's who when you first walk into those appointments. So it's really, really nice just to have someone on your team who's going to have your back, who's going to know when you want to stop, and they can be a really good voice for you as well. Yeah, I think it's an important thing to have, that you're not alone in those situations.
100%. Yeah. Great. I think when I was thinking about a title for this wee podcast, I was thinking of This Might Make You Flinch. I thought it was a nice,
Yeah, it's great.
it rhymes with your you might
You
feel a
might
pinch.
feel a pinch. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time today, Ainsley. I
You're welcome.
think that this is going to resonate with a lot of people experiencing all sorts of chronic conditions, actually. And I wish you all the very, very best with your changing your petition and changing the recommendations around gynecological care.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited for it.
Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you.